All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the HourGlass podcast. You're joining Tim and Kareen, and today we're going to talk about taking holidays, which is something I don't do enough of. What about you, Kareen?
Yeah, sounds like a good time. I wouldn't know about it.
I was actually thinking about it today because I was like, oh, we're going to do this, jump on here and talk about this stuff. I don't think I've had a holiday since like high school, I'd say, which is
Nothing?
no, not a holiday where I haven't been working,
Yeah.
which is I was obviously 18. I'm 33. So
Wow. Do you reckon that's the sign then?
I think it's a sign. I think I'm going to take my own advice from this podcast and then go and take a holiday.
Yeah. This one's directed at you, at
Yeah.
Tim. If you're not Tim, you don't need to listen.
But I guess, the theme of today is like as athletes, we are constantly in pursuit of our goal, physique goals. We're constantly striving for more. We're constantly trying to figure out how to do more. When in reality, sometimes we've got to take a step back and realize that, recovery mentally is also performance enhancing. Being in a state of clarity, being in control of your emotions and thoughts and feelings and all that sort of stuff, and also just being passionate to your full extent requires you to sometimes take a step back and really recharge in the full capacity. I mean, obviously, I definitely needed to listen to this back when I was competing, but I would always find that when I went away or when I went, when I took a break from the monotony or just really just took a step back from training so hard and things like this, inevitably when you return, you would see fast results because your body's fresh and your mind's fresh. So we're just here to talk about that in totality. Like, how do we incorporate that into a plan or a program, whatever, or into your lifestyle to continue progressing at your maximum, stay healthy? What would be your thoughts on that straight away? Like, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, I mean, straight away, right off the bat, I always think about like being in your flow state, right? And so what is flow state? It's where you are productive and it's not an effort to be productive. And that's going to come from like your mental and your physical being in synergy. If there's a block anywhere between that with either of those, you fall out of your flow state and straight away your productivity just comes to a halt or everything feels super difficult. It can feel really overwhelming, which is like just like you train your muscles at the gym. If you're there every single day, revving it out, not giving yourself any rest, sleep is bad, recovery is bad, your body's not going to work as optimally, right? And you're going to start to see not even just a halt, but sometimes a decline in your progress. The same sort of thing with your mental state. You know, if you are every single day just ticking the boxes, trying to be productive, trying to overwork yourself in that like the grind of life, and you never actually take a break or a pause to help yourself mentally recover from that load, that's the same thing there. You're just going to come to a halt and fall out of your flow state, which can be really hard, especially when you're very addicted to the progress that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's that brain body connection. You know,
Mm.
your 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 nervous system runs the show. Like, if your brain is fried, your body won't respond. You're doing all of these things on a daily basis as a bodybuilder, or as a physique athlete, or even a lifestyle. Someone who's just trying to change their lifestyle. I guess it's a lot of energy intense tasks. You know, even just thinking about how you train in the gym takes more energy than training mindlessly. Your brain is powerful. It's taking a lot of energy to run it. And so obviously, with being dedicated and having a strict goal and trying to stay motivated all the time and work to, achieve those goals, that takes constant managing of that thought of your thoughts to stay on track, to stay focused. So not just from a physical output perspective, but also a mental output perspective. You're not just sort of waking up and doing whatever comes to mind. You're constantly having to work at staying focused. And bodybuilding is a 24-hour thing. So, you know, it obviously ranges to the extreme of pro athletes, but it's still there. If you're just trying to look better, feel better, you've got to remember that you've got to factor in rest mentally, not just
Mm.
physically. So I find that cool because it obviously is always far more important the more extreme you get, but it's still relevant, if you're just trying to lose weight or if you're trying to manage your hormones, I talk to a lot of women about this especially post show, but just in general, if you're trying to manage your hormones, get things balanced, you can do a lot of things with your training and nutrition to manage. But if you're not doing enough with your mind and resting enough and trying to de-stress, improve your environment, you're going to get to a position where it doesn't matter what fancy program or protocol or supplement you're taking, you're just mentally not ready to be balanced. You're not ready to be relaxed or whatever your state needs to be in order to see that result. And that's often the one thing that we don't count or we don't factor in, especially if you're paying a coach or you're paying someone to assist you, a mentor, or whatever. You know, you're expecting programming, you're expecting guidance, you're expecting these things to come to you to help you progress. You're rarely expecting someone to say, go and have a holiday, you know?
Mm.
So I think it's a very important thing. But that's why we wanted to title this episode "Why You Need a Holiday," because I think it's sort of like it like draws your attention, but is also very, very relevant. Um, when was your last holiday?
Last holiday. Well, last holiday. Actually, I think it was it would have been Bali at the start of this year, but that was a camp as well, so it was still like working in a way, I guess, but it was like a really good mental break. And this is the thing, like even just talking about this topic, it feels weird, right? Because
Mm.
like usually we're telling people to do the opposite,
Yeah,
like telling people to do more, stay accountable, tick your boxes, things like that. But I feel you can fall very easily on either side of the spectrum, what is why it feels weird to talk about it, because you know the people who are listening to this podcast, I think just knowing the demographic, that tells me like, hey, okay, these people are clued in. They're probably very accountable. They're probably finding every way to better themselves as a, athlete and things like that. So that tells me they're hardworking and that we can confidently tell them like, yo, you probably need a holiday.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, like um, I think a good way to add on to that is uh, not excusing being lazy. Um, it's like the same conversation as when people are like, "Oh, when do I deload from my training?" It's kind of the same concept as that, obviously a little bit more extreme in its entirety, like actually taking yourself out of your current situation, decompressing somewhere else, and then coming back into that situation requires a different scenario, obviously, for that to be necessary. But it's the same sort of thing as training. When you're training really hard and you're progressing and you get to a point where that training is actually having a negative impact on your ability to continue showing up in the same capacity. You have to be training very hard for that to be the case. Like it's not sort of like, oh, every 6 weeks I'm going to deload regardless. You have to read the room. You have to know these are the signals that are telling me that overtraining is a factor. No, I'm no longer feeling rested even if I'm having lots of sleep. So you got to be very driven and very motivated, and have the intensity in the gym to achieve that to be in a position where that's necessary. So it's the same thing with what we say here is like go and have a holiday, but you also have to be in such a position where that's necessary. It's not just, I mean, I don't think there's any downside to having a holiday, but at the same time, you don't sort of want to like rely on the fact that, okay, if I don't have a 4 week holiday in Bali, I won't progress. That's not what we're saying. It's more understand the signals and signs that what you're actually doing is great. You're working really hard. You're very consistent. You're very motivated, driven. Everything's in the right spot. It's just a matter of if you continue to push in this same capacity at this point with your mindset, you're going to see diminishing returns. And so removing yourself from that environment and then coming back to it with a fresh mind can often be the missing link. But I guess that's what we want to talk about today is how do you figure that out? Like how do you find that point?
Mm.
Because it is different for everyone.
I was gonna ask, could you speak a little bit on like the impairments that you might run into if you have overworked yourself mentally? Like what are kind of like the key things where you're like, okay, like this is time to pull back.
Yeah, like straight off the bat, I see this all the time post show, like especially with my athletes. Like we don't muck around, we push really hard, and you get to a point, I see this even in a prep too, as well, like towards the end, is like you start to just see training as a chore. You know, if you're someone who's become a competitor and you're working towards a stage, getting on stage, you're likely someone who loves the gym. It's rare that someone does that and they don't like the gym. So it's often the love of training that's led to the need to get on stage or the want to get on stage. So when that changes, you know, you start to dread training. You don't enjoy yourself anymore. You hate this idea of going in and training and this monotony. That's a big sign to me. Whenever I talk to to a client or an athlete, and they're sort of saying these things about they've kind of lost the love, or they feel like it's just a job, and not something they love anymore. You know, it's a good sign to me that we've reached some threshold.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, another one would be like just the tone of check-ins, or like the self-talk, especially post-show. Sometimes, you know, you can be a little bit more food focused. That's kind of normal anyway, but often it's the case of being some athletes are just all or nothing in every capacity. Like they don't keep anything in any sort of balance. They're just super, super focused and sort of isolate themselves completely. So it's just that general approach. Like it's gone from I love it, everything's amazing, you know, I'm so enthusiastic, so motivated, so driven, to just almost being a complete 180 on that. And that's where, especially as a coach, like, you know, we do a lot of tracking and biofeedback and stuff like this, and a lot of written feedback, and also a lot of you know, I rely on voice messages and things like this to hear someone's tone of voice. So there's a lot of data that you can use, like a lot of tracking of data, to see where someone's at. And it's always, I think, generally post show, that's where I always suggest, you know, it's a good time now to take a break. If you can, go on holidays. Don't train. You know, just really sort of remove yourself from, or if you can't go on holidays, at least take a break from the gym. You know,
Mm.
a holiday from the gym is often sometimes enough for some people. You know, you don't need to have to like be able to afford a Hawaii holiday for 2 weeks or something like this, but you know, just removing yourself from the monotony,
Mm.
um, is sometimes all you need. Like go and do something else, like Pilates or something, for a couple of weeks, and just let your mind. It's not necessarily about the physical. There's obviously the physical requirement to recover post show as well, but often the mental recovery is something that's misread or misunderstood.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think, and also just being aware of yourself. Like that's where journal. Like you're a big advocate for journaling, Kareen. Like
Mhm.
you would notice in your own journaling things shift, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
You,
100%. It's not it like even though we're talking about like gym related stuff as well, it's also something that branches into other aspects of your life. So saying like competing, I mean, sorry, not competing, going to the gym feels like a chore. Maybe even like going to work feels like a chore as well, or getting out of bed in the morning feels like a chore. Taking care of yourself feels like a chore. Like those are all signs as well that, hey, maybe you're under a lot of mental load, and you're overworking yourself a bit too hard right now. Because I think there's a very big correlation, like not only just with competitors, but like gym goers in general. Um, People are usually very like motivated. They're in a space with high intensity, like other people that are doing things with their life. There's a lot of like hustle grind culture at the moment that really influences like you don't feel you don't feel productive if you just have a little break to yourself, right? Your mind is currently in like such a normalized high stress state that taking a break just it's not at the forefront of your mind and it doesn't feel productive to you, right? So that's where, yeah, like journaling comes into it a lot for me, where I can just kind of assess exactly what I'm doing at the moment and how that's making me feel, and like seeing the little gaps that I'm missing. Like, okay, maybe right now I notice I'm feeling quite like anxious or I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. Okay, what would help me to break that pattern, right? Before I get there. Finding the little a, B's, and C's, in all of that in between, to be like, where can I put a little space moment for myself? Maybe go see family, go see friends, fill my own cup, maybe go get a coffee in the morning, put that into my routine. Now it's like my little ritual that gives me some mental space time. Um, or like nighttime winding down for the night, having your own routine to wind down and relying on that every day to like kind of give you some clarity and help you debrief from everything that's happened in the day as well.
Yeah, it's crazy how much these little simple things work. Like you hear all the time of little strategies. It is really crazy when you start to implement, like even just a little bit of meditation is in some ways a holiday because you really all you're talking about here is a holiday from your regular routine or your regular where your mind regularly sits. And so, this constant physical assertion is putting your mind and nervous system in a state of, fight or flight or just what do they call it? Parasympathetic, right? Or
Mm,
sympathetic. Sympathetic. It's a sympathetic state. So it's constantly reacting to this output or this sort of fatigue. So little strategies there are often the most important ones. And I mean, when we say go and take a holiday, I think it's once you've burnt yourself out completely to the point where these little strategies no longer are effective. Um, and that's sort of like, I guess, doesn't sort of happen within, like you start your journey, it doesn't happen 8 weeks later. It's something that will happen years into a process, maybe sooner, depending on how vigorous it is. But accepting that this is going to happen if you are a hardworking person in any aspect, not just bodybuilding, like you were saying, is really, really crucial because you want to maintain trajectory, you want to progress in a consistent way, or at least as close to linearly as possible. You don't want to get to a point where you just burn out completely and keep. If you listen to this and you're one of these people that sort of like get to a certain point where it requires a lot more of you to get to the next part, and you always seem to just change directions and do something else. This could be one of the issues is that you're not allowing yourself time to rest to be able to push through each particular point that's requiring more of you. And so instead of pushing through and having a strategy to push through, you do something different that's more exciting.
mm,
And if you're constantly jumping from one thing to another, this could be the issue. I often see it with people who like they're very, very excited at the beginning. They're very enthusiastic and they're almost overly enthusiastic. And then that kind of depletes and disappears and they kind of, they also disappear with that energy. So it's finding ways to understand yourself to avoid that,
mm.
to be able to actually persist and achieve your goals.
And mental burnout is very dangerous as
Yeah.
well. Like, I don't think people realize just how dangerous burnout can be. I went down like a little rabbit hole of like listening about psychology and things like that and the way that burnout sneaks up on you. And you kind of like I was saying before, it gets so normalized that she was saying there's like 5 stages of burnout, right? And it gets so normalized that if you don't intervene between stage 1 to 5, at level 5 stage of burnout, it can take like up to a year to fully recover from that burnout and that stress, and completely shutting yourself off from everyone and having to rebuild those
Mm.
relationships and rebuild your own personality and all of that. Like it's so dangerous, and that's why we want to talk about these things, because like there's you'd rather catch it early and have that 1 week little holiday or have your little daily rituals even to catch it beforehand, rather than be a complete write-off for a year and need to rebuild from the start.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, so like this is where I suppose knowing yourself is really, really important because there's obviously I haven't had like we were speaking before, I haven't had a holiday in a long time, but I also do different things on a daily basis to manage it. So I think that, there have been points as an athlete where it would have been necessary had I have thought about it in a better way, or at least understood like understood these concepts better at that time. But now that I'm in a position where I do have that ability to step back from the physical assertion, I'm now left with like more of a mental fatigue more than I am left with a physical fatigue. Even though that mental fatigue can sort of manifest itself in the same way as physical fatigue, like it comes
Mm.
across to your body the same way. So that's where then I've had to manage that mental fatigue through actually taking time off, like, changing my schedule, meditating, making sure I read the signs. Like if my sleep starts to be like I have bad quality sleep or I'm less enthusiastic to work. Um, just little things like this. So exactly what you said, like you got to know yourself and be recording, gathering data, journaling, and just being aware of the fact that it is happening, and you've just got to know when to place those things strategically. I think you said to me a couple of weeks ago that you started taking a full day off a week.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, you have no idea
Yeah.
how good that's been. Yeah, I'm pretty happy to talk about that whole little rut now. Like now that I've fully overcome it and gotten over it. But there was like a weird couple of weeks that everything just very quickly crept up on me, and I feel like I was programming myself to just run on like fumes, and I was working, and I was like, oh, like work is things I love, so I'm okay to work and just do it every day, do it every hour of the day, be totally available, all this stuff, and I was okay to not give time to
Mm,
myself until I realized that would negatively
yeah.
affect me eventually. And it all crept up on me, and we kind of delved into it and had big chats and stuff because every day felt like a mission. I was waking up and I was like, okay, got to get out of bed. That's my first step. All right, off we get. And then, kind of every day felt a little bit like anxious and like I felt like something bad was going to happen every day. And
Mm,
it just wasn't right. And I was like, I've totally, like I was saying before, that flow state, I was like, I can't even fathom what a flow state is to me right now because everything just feels so out of alignment. Right. And then I came back to like journaling.
mm,
The journal opened, and I was like putting all my thoughts on paper, and like I said before, I was like just trying to pinpoint like where I'm at now and what I need, you know?
mm,
And I came to the conclusion like I feel like I probably didn't have enough space to show up to myself and the people around me as the best person that I could, and that was affecting the way that I saw myself, as a person. It's affecting the way that I felt about myself, how I wanted to like show up for clients and things like that. I was like, I think I just need some more time to get on top of like my errands and seeing my family and trying to show up for myself as well, taking care of myself. And that's where I was like, okay, well, what does that look like right now, right? Like how are we going to get to that end goal? I was like, look, I'm gonna take a full day off every week. And it's actually been hard. I was literally, because today's my day off actually, and I was seeing a
mm.
friend I was seeing
here,
a friend earlier
here we are.
this morning. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, it's actually been really difficult for me to just be okay being unproductive and being okay in stillness. And
Or at least in not productive to the things that you think you need to be productive to.
exactly. Like literally, I had this thought today, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I just woke up like an hour earlier, I could have gotten this done and that done and this done. And I had to literally like mentally stop myself and be like, yo, no, today is like your day off. Just let it be a day off. You don't have to
Mm,
achieve all these things today. This day is just for you to sit, to look at what how to get your life sorted, and like look
mm.
at what you want to do today to fill your own cup, and let it just be that. It doesn't have to be about all your wins right now. Stillness is fine.
Yeah. So crazy to like, especially when you are a very driven person, having that realization that you actually have to factor in rest is kind of, it's very unsettling because you achieve what you want to achieve because of how hard you work. And so being restricted in your ability to achieve more because of your ability to work hard is such a strange, it's like backhanded compliment. It's like, yeah, you get all these great things happen to you, but to get any further, you have to do less. And you're like, huh? So, so I think it's really, really important to understand, like, okay, if I'm going into a really, like, we'll bring it back to bodybuilding, for example. If I'm going into a prep and I know I'm about to have 16 weeks of very focused effort, it's likely, as we all know, we need to recover post show, but it's also very important to know I've just had 16 weeks of very imbalanced approach to my life. I now need to have at least 6 weeks or something similar to that, maybe even half of that, 8 weeks, where I am far more balanced and I'm addressing things that I neglected, not necessarily from a food perspective. This is where people misconstrued the two. They think that now that now that I'm post show, I need to bring all this balance with my food back in. It's actually far more the opposite. How do I bring in these things that I've neglected, like family? I'm not saying that you need to neglect your family and prep, but just for example, Deborah, what am I saying?
Yeah, but it happens,
You know what I mean?
you got so many things on your to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, especially post show, yeah, you want to make sure that you're allowing yourself that time to have that holiday in essence. It's not really like we said, not going to Bali for 6 weeks, but if you have the ability to do something like that, get yourself into a position with the other things that you've been neglecting and give them attention. It's a very good opportunity to revitalize that focus. Not just from a physical standpoint, like getting your hormones and body back on track, but also resetting. That's a good way to put it, is
Mm.
getting through that crazy focus that you've had and getting back to some normality of what your schedule would normally look like outside of that intense 16-week period. So I guess it's the same in any other thing. Like if you're starting a project, or you're starting a business, or you've just started coaching, or like you with your posing, you were very busy through, you had a lot of girls on stage, and you were traveling and lots of face to face and online and all this stuff. And so after that season ended, and we spoke about this, it's like you have to come to terms with the fact that I've just put a lot of effort into a short period of time. I now have to accept the fact that I'm probably not going to be able to put that same amount of effort in consistently. So you kind of train yourself to be so hardworking because you have to be. And then when that sort of project ends, or you kind of post show, whatever you want to say, you still feel like you have to give that same level of effort because that's what you've trained yourself to do. But it's actually the opposite. You now have done that project, it's finished, you've crossed the finish line. Now it's time to reset and build a new balance again that's more in line with the long term.
You have to be quite nurturing with yourself,
Mm.
like you need to understand that you're not a robot. You can't be programmed to do things a certain way forever. Like you have to step back and understand, like I need to protect myself physically and mentally here, and find the ways to do that, because robots, they can go on forever.
Mm.
Humans, we can't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, would love to, but we can't. And the moment that you accept that, like everything's gonna fall into line, you're gonna sleep better. You're literally, like, your digestion will feel better. The way that you move, the way that you talk to people, the
Mm.
way that you show up for yourself, putting your self care in, like, into your mornings, your night times, things like that. Like that's all gonna operate from a place of like nurture rather than a place of like, or it's almost like an aggressive, like when you work too hard, it's like a very aggressive way of operating. And you just got to kind of like be able to switch between the two, right?
Yep.
Between attacking something and then like defending yourself and defending your brain.
Yeah, and it becomes super apparent to me, when we have chats with different athletes and we talk to successful bikini girls and things like this. They all have the same approach. Like they are very hardworking, but they're very good at managing the other things in their life. They've got their family in a good routine. They're addressing their mental health like on a daily basis. They've got their business in a great schedule. They're operating at a very high level with everything, but then with themselves, they're very nurturing and very caring and very, very understanding. And when you're able to do that, when you've got all those things spinning, you got all those things moving, um, your output in the chosen area that you want to excel in is so much higher. Because it's like if you've got to work really hard for 15 minutes and then you get 10 minutes break, you're going to really focus. But if you're going to work for 5 hours straight and you get 1 minute break, it might be okay the first time through, but then after a couple of rounds of that, you're going to be like, it's not really sustainable.
Mm.
So it's really understanding what it is you're trying to do. What is your long-term goal? Because even if you have the world's best coach, and you're not managing these things on the side, you're not trying to unlock your full potential through understanding yourself. Yeah, you'll burn out quicker if you don't address that stuff. You don't take responsibility for that stuff on your own. Your coach is only going to push you harder because you're not getting the results. So that's where a good understanding as a team is really crucial. the communication side is really, really important. You know, if you, like we said before, there's going to be signs of this stuff, like, um, you know, you're not as motivated as you normally are, or you're having problems making decisions, like decision fatigue. You're snapping at people, you know. And I always find this with some athletes, like they'll be okay to me, but then I'll talk to their partner and I'll be like, man, they're struggling, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll keep that in mind, and then sort of that'll affect some decisions, you know. A very good understanding of how someone is in their personal life really, really helps the process sometimes. So it's a matter of being very honest about that with the people that are in your corner, and even yourself. Like, okay, it's probably not normal that I'm having a go at my partner for saying something all the time, you know, or leaving is it really that bad that the towel's on the floor or something? You know, like you're just picking up little irritants that aren't normally a problem. Or maybe there's digestive issues, or you're having trouble sleeping, or everything, you know, these kind of things. That it becomes very obvious if you're paying close attention to it and not accepting it as just, this is bodybuilding, this is what is required of me to achieve greatness. You know, there is going to be some room for that, but not to the point where it's actually making your life worse, right? Um,
What would you suggest to, like, say some one of your clients is in prep,
mm,
and you can kind of start to see the little bits and pieces that come with burnout or come with being in too high a state of stress, um just the little signs. How would you go about incorporating more like play into their life, or more rest into their life, when they still need to get specific things done in accordance with the timeline?
yeah, I mean, definitely looking at a schedule. Um, you know, it's often that there's a lot of the time these sort of people are very busy people. It's not often that you burn out if you're just you know, chilling at home on the couch kind of thing. I mean, it is possible, but less likely. So these people that find themselves in this scenario are very high achieving people. They're very, very busy. Their schedules are quite full. So looking at the schedule, you know, how much are you trying to do? You know, like, is it realistic what we're trying to do? And if it's not actually unrealistic, what we're trying to do, it's just a matter of organizing that correctly. Maybe things are, you know, taking too long, or like maybe there is something that can be adjusted with the training. But I think it's just actually starting with a schedule. We're starting to schedule in things that are productive to maintaining this balance. You know, what do you enjoy? What do you like doing? And then making sure you have something in there every day, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes. Um, you know, we always have time. We always have 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how busy you are. You always get 10 minutes for something. So starting small, I guess, just starting with like little things like learning how to meditate, or deep breathing, or like little walks where you're mindful walking, not just like, okay, I've got to do cardio. It's like, I'm just going to go for a walk and not actually track my steps, and just think, and just leave my phone at home. Like, just being mindful with yourself. Or mindful eating is a good one, because, you know, as bodybuilders, we usually sit with our meal and watch something on YouTube, and, you know, we're trying to pass the time of the meal, because it's like chicken and broccoli, you know? So that sort of stuff is just starting to become more present and really start to think about how you feel. And I think journaling is great. I don't personally do journaling because I'm more of an action. I take actions. Um, but I have in the past. I've done like affirmations and written things down at the end of the day, or things I want to improve and things like that. And I think just knowing how you think is really important. Like, what do you, how would you relate to yourself, and just starting to work on those things, and scheduling something in for each day is really, really a good way to start. And then you could go even further to that. Is like, I've got a client now who's working in a job. They've changed their shifts around, so they've asked to change shifts, and it's more in line with their goals at the moment, and the boss is okay with it. So often asking for help is a really good way. Um, just expressing, communicating to those around you that, you know, this is what you're going through, and you need to take extra diligence with your rest and things like this, so that you're not feeling like you're letting anyone down. It's just like, even if there's no option to do anything about it, at least you've communicated where you're at, so that the boss isn't like, what's wrong with this person? Um, or even if it's in your own business, it's like, okay, now's the time not to grow your business. It's now a time to maintain what you're doing, and double down on productivity with what you have, rather than launching the new project or launching the new app or whatever it is. It's like, you know, it's time to focus on you and your ability to work rather than helping anyone else, you know. So I think it's
Mm.
just being really aware of where you're at and you know, like I guess another one is like, okay, you've had a big day of work. You've interacted with a lot of people. You've helped a lot of people. You've dealt with other people's problems. Um, and you're feeling really fatigued. It's like maybe don't train that day. Maybe have a rest day. You know, just being holistic with your understanding of where your energy is going. Um, and how much sleep you're getting. Like, okay, my fatigue. Like we track a lot of biofeedback with as you know with our app that we use. And if your fatigue's at like 7 or 8 out of 10 consistently, and you're not sleeping well, and your digestion's a little bit off, and things like this, it's like, okay, we need to have a couple of days rest from the gym. Go and do something else. Go get your hair done. Go get your nails done. Go get a massage. Especially in a prep, you're not your primary objective isn't to grow muscle anymore. It's now to maintain muscle and get lean. So you're not looking at training frequency and duration and volume and things like this to be optimal. You're just trying to maintain, do the minimum amount that you can to maintain your physique. So you've got a lot more freedom with rest. I mean, off season, yes, you can rest a lot as well, but you've got more freedom in a prep to rest because all you're trying to do is get leaner. So that's where I would always suggest, like I've done that with you before, like just go and have, you know, don't do cardio for a couple of days, don't train, just really deload your body. So I think
Mm.
it's like just being very realistic with what's happening, what your expectations are from or responsibilities are from an external perspective. What are your responsibilities for the prep? Have you ticked the boxes? And then if you've managed all those things as best as you can and it's still not working, then you take a step away and actually rest properly, right?
Mm.
Um, but
Yeah.
there's obviously a lot more to it, you know. In for people that aren't doing, you know, prep, for example, it's actually can be far more it can be easier to slip into the overworked mindset because you don't really have an end target and you also don't really have an understanding of, well, you don't really have anything to compare it to. Like you don't really have an off season or you know, like a prep physique. You don't really have any data. You're just kind of like thinking, okay, I'm not where I want to be. I got to work harder. And that's where it can sometimes snowball into this thing where you end up. I've seen some ladies with they're sort of, you know, doing hours of cardio and eating nothing, and because they just kind of gradually pyramid themselves into this overworked state, and their body adjusts because it's not, you don't really have a timeline on it, so you're constantly just doing more and more and more and getting less and less out of it because you're not taking the rest. Um, when really all you needed was a holiday and to schedule in some time to for yourself, and you would start to respond on far more food and far less cardio. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's just bodybuilders that have this problem, right?
Honestly, I think it's a lot to do with the what you're consuming,
Mm.
like externally. So, and
Yeah.
not talking about like food, what you're actually consuming, but like mentally, what you're seeing like online and what you're seeing other people doing and like the comparison game and things like that. I think that plays a lot into it because never before have humans been so exposed to other people's highlight reels of their life,
Oh
you know?
yeah.
Like something that you see on someone's story where they've got like, oh, like yeah, the classic cafe shot, like, oh, through getting through my clients this morning and then going to go do my cardio and going to go train and things like that. And like subconsciously it plays on your mind and you're like, well, why am I not doing enough? Why am I not doing more? And then it's crazy just how normalized like being in such a constant state of stress has become, you know? Like it's truly like a very big hustle culture that's been so
Mm.
ingrained into us now where like literally just sitting still for a moment and not having any stimulation in your brain, it's almost like it's impossible. Like it feels so foreign to us now. I find that so interesting, like how much life is being missed just because we're so consumed by doing
Yeah.
more.
I was thinking about that the other day because something similar to that, where you know, if you go back to like 1930s or something. I mean, obviously I wasn't alive back then, but I would assume that like um, the main focus back then was just making money, supporting your family, and surviving, right? Whereas now we have the privilege of like, you know, we go to the gym 5 days a week, and we think we're not working hard enough. We don't
That's
get
very
paid.
true.
We don't get paid to go to the gym. Indirectly we do because it's our livelihood in a sense, but it's not like that's what's bringing the paying the bills. You know, so if it's not, what's I say? Like if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense because your priority should be your livelihood, your wealth, your wellness, your family, like making sure you got a roof over your head, and then trickling down from that is your hobbies. And so if your hobbies creating a deficit in your life where you're unable to show up for everyone else and yourself, because realistically you yourself outside of your goals is a separate person. If you're unable to show up for that person in the best capacity, you're not really living your life, like you're kind of staying, you're adhering to whatever your expectations are of yourself, but you're not really living. You're just sort of trying to tick the boxes and do more and achieve this physique that you think is going to bring you something. So it's like a business plan. If we approach it like we have a business plan, and this is our objective. This is ultimately what has to happen for us to sell the business and move on. Um, then you would factor in rest and taking holidays and deloading far easier because it's part of the process now. It's actually necessary for you to get to the end. Um, so yeah, I think it's always difficult now because, like you said, we're so overstimulated and we're exposed to everyone's success so easily. Like all you have to do is open your phone and you'll see someone that's their morning routine is like so excessive that like, I mean, you might be watching this thing in the morning and you're like, I haven't even got out of bed yet, and this person's done like 7,000 reps on, so yeah,
Mm.
it's a tough one. Like, how do you set up your, like, do you have set social media time, or like, what do you do with that?
Um, Not so much. I feel like I probably used to go on social media a lot more than I do now.
Mm,
Honestly, now I don't think I'd want to be using social media if my businesses didn't rely on it and my career and things like that. Because you come to a realization that like everything is quite faked.
mm,
Um, and I think even like I think society as a whole has come to that realization. You look at like trends and in marketing and things like that, right? Like I could talk about this for so long. I love this kind of
yeah.
stuff. But it used to be like the whole someone would like rent the expensive car or have the big jet in the background, hold all these like designer bags and be talking about like their business and things like that. But that stuff just doesn't do well anymore, right?
Mm,
Because people value more realness, right?
mm,
But that realness can also be faked. That's the
mm,
thing, like, and you see it all the time. Like, who's going to post their bad days? Who's going to
yeah.
post, actually, today I'm sitting at home and I'm not doing anything because I feel like my body needed a rest. Like, no one's going to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not normalized. It no longer becomes the norm. The norm is actually getting up and not having breaks and doing it all and fitting in eight different things into an hour. But it's not normal. That thing can be faked. So I think it is just coming to the realization that everything that you do see online, like take it with a
Mm,
grain of salt. um so someone's story, someone's Instagram feed, it's just a very small snippet of their life. They're not going to be
mm,
posting every minute, every second of what they're doing. So understand that
mm.
it is a highlight reel and come to terms with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that something that I've started doing is like if I'm doing something, I'm really doing it. And if I'm not doing something, I'm not doing anything. Like like if I'm working, I'm working and that's it. I'm not on my phone, I'm not talking to someone else, I'm sitting in my office and I'm getting my job done. If I'm at the gym, I'm not on my phone, I'm training. I'm there to do this and I want to enjoy that for the full extent. Um, or if I'm resting, I don't have my phone on me. I'm resting. I'm sleeping. My phone's out somewhere else or whatever. You know, so setting rules and boundaries for yourself because it's so easy to get distracted. Like all you have to do is open your phone, and your Instagram algorithm knows how to keep you on the phone. It's like that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep you on that fucking app.
Mm.
So anything you do, like even Netflix, is designed to keep you on Netflix. So you've got to be aware that you're being sold constantly, and you have to keep selling yourself. You have to keep selling yourself in the same way that other things are selling you their thing, you have to keep selling yourself your own dreams. Um, and that takes energy. Like that takes effort and energy to constantly do. Like you can't just wake
Mm.
up one day and expect to be motivated and driven. If you're struggling with that, you need to just completely decompress from these experiences you're having every day, like this external like influence and stimulus, and just recenter yourself on what it is that you actually want. Because yeah, like you'll figure it out much easier without the without the flashy stuff in front of you and the people doing well and all this stuff. Like you know, it's very easy. I do it all the time. I mean, even since I retired from competing, like all it would take sometimes is someone to do well on stage, and I'd be like, oh, I'm back into it. I'm a competitor again, you know. And you're just like, no, I've done that. Like I've retired. Like I'm not doing that anymore. But it takes. It's not hard. It's not easy to do that. You have to constantly detach from it and go back to your values and what it is that you actually want for yourself in your life, and not be tempted like the moth to the flame. Um, especially if you're a competitor, and especially if you're not like, well, it doesn't really matter whether you're a competitor or not, but especially if you're aiming for something specific, like you want this hourglass physique, or you want this trophy, or you want this pro card. There's going to be so many people that it's their time, and you've got to resist the FOMO and not be so like anti-rest. Rest is bad. Like, treat it as an opportunity to grow, because that's where you want to be, as part of the process. So
Yeah,
I think we'll
big
talk
time.
about I think we'll talk about some practical tips there.
Yeah,
Um, so like you were talking about journaling before, that's a good one. What else do you kind of do now as part of your
I
ways
think
to mentally detach?
for me, I it's like it sounds a bit funny because it's like it kind of sounds like the opposite of what we try to do, but I like to kind of channel more into something that's mentally stimulating, but in more of like a creative way. So, like, whether that's like I really like drawing. Actually, I love drawing. I came from like an art background, right? So I love drawing. The more like I wish I had the time to just be painting all day every day, but it's become like a little special time that you can just like detach and do something creative and stimulate yourself that way, where it's not so much attached to like an end goal or attached to work or money, anything like that, right? I like listening to, funny enough, podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, but doing it in a way where like I can just sit and be with the podcast, right? So something again that's like mentally stimulating, but also in a creative manner, right?
Mm.
So I'll listen to someone's maybe like an interview of someone that I really admire, and I love to like learn about the background and how they started and whatever that they do and things like that. So that it gives me just some time to like sit with myself and listen to someone else's story, and it doesn't, again, like doesn't have to lead to something, right? Like it's pure like learning, but in such like a carefree kind of way, you know. And then just looking at things like I enjoy, like if I might like cook a nice meal, I might actually put effort into my food for once. But I really like cooking. If I had all the time in the world to do cooking, I'd do cooking, you know. So if I can use that in a little spare hour that I have, I'll take it. If I can go to the beach, I'll take it. If I can
Mm.
have just like, you know, those little things, even just cleaning the house where I just put some music on and I clean the house and I know like, whew, this is just going to mentally take so much weight off of my shoulders because everything around me is going to be clean and organized. What do they say? Like an organized uh mind is an organized place or something like that. And it just
Yeah,
kind
it's
of like
like
thrusts me into that environment.
yeah, it's like dopaminergic tasks, like cleaning up your space, making your bed, doing these little things constantly. I like. It sounds weird, but I like when I cut my food up to eat it. I make sure it's like perfectly cut, you know, and just put it on the plate perfectly. There we go.
That's
That
so
was
niche, Tim.
yeah,
Your mind
but
works in such funny ways.
it brings me so much joy to see it well presented on a plate, because you know what? For like for like 12 years, I'd say, yeah, 12 years when I was competing, from like 18 to 30, my food was so boring to look at, right?
Mm.
So now that I'm not competing, I get so much joy out of seeing something. It's the same food. I eat the same way. I'm still a bodybuilder, but it looks better, and that brings me. That's like a holiday, you know. So
That's
that's
really sweet.
yeah. So that's that stuff like cleaning up your room or getting some furniture, like making the room nice, or getting some new clothes, or getting some new gym kicks, or you know, um, getting a haircut. Do you know how good you feel when you get a haircut? Like these little things, don't discount them because it's like obviously the topic of this podcast is when to take a holiday, but these little activities are the same for your mind as taking a holiday. So you don't always need to go away completely. Sometimes you just need to have a different perspective or change your outlook or change your schedule. Um, I'd say there's very few times where you actually need to actually escape that. And I would say that's probably likely when you're really just completely out of love with the process. And that's where I think it's really crucial to know, like, your goals haven't gone anywhere. Um, if you're a very headstrong, disciplined person and you're suddenly out of love with the process, it's not, it's not actually cause to change directions always. Like, you've got to just go inside yourself and step outside of what you were doing, and it's going to be there. Um, it's often that I see people like do that. They'll completely stop what they're doing, think they've lost the love and change directions only to come back later and have lost all this time because the process of realizing that they still love the process is such an extensive thing where they just end up back where they started, and had they have just put things in the right position and de-stress or de-loaded their mind, they would be that much further ahead now still, you know.
I
um
think it's like a matter of knowing that you don't need to have everything now,
yeah.
because a lot of the time, that maybe realization of, oh, maybe this isn't made for me, maybe I have to go do something else, that'll come from maybe like failure, right?
Mm,
But you need to realize that, like, you don't have to have everything right now. It's okay to not have everything right now, and it's okay to take a step back and not feel guilty from that, but revisit it.
mm,
Like, there's no boom, like cut ties, never doing that again, never dipping into it. And then later, after a lot of times pass, you're like, oh, wait, maybe I just didn't stick it out for long enough. It's okay to dabble in things. It's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay to not have
mm.
everything happen right now. It's more about just enjoying it and allowing yourself to, again, like, navigate from the aggressive standpoint and navigating also from the nurturing standpoint as well.
Yeah, there is a lot of ways that you can continue working towards your goals without it being in the same, you know, same to the same extent. Um, you don't have to sort of get out of shape and lose your values because you don't want to compete again. You know, that's how you feel right now, but you've it's not necessarily living your life if you're not staying true to yourself. So I think it's really crucial to know what the issue is. Like, am I burnt out, or do I want to change directions of my life completely? And I think that's often a very tough decision to make. But I think possibly this conversation would help in some way. Maybe I just need different perspective. Maybe I just need to rest and step away from in the same capacity, and that love is still there. You know, I know I felt that many times when I was competing. Is like I would literally just be like, I'm done, and then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, I'm back. You know, it's like all you needed was a rest. You know,
Do you ever
so
feel like that as a coach some days?
yeah, I mean, it depends on like there can be a particularly difficult conversation sometimes, or you're just overworked. Especially around comp time, like you just overworked, and all it takes is for me, literally all it takes is like 30 minutes of meditation, and I'm good. So I've gotten to that point where I know the signs now, and I know like how much work I can handle, and I'm very good with managing that. But I certainly don't ever feel like I should don't want to do it anymore. It's just more like I know I need to take a day off. Like I know what the problem is and I know how to fix it. And the only times I really don't do that are when I don't have the time to. Like it's like I know I need to work for the next 3 weeks straight, and then I can rest. But I think if you know where the finish line is, it's easier to manage because then you're telling people around you, and you've got a very stacked schedule, so you're not taking on more work and this sort of thing. So it's like competing. You just know what's necessary. You know what you got to do to tick the boxes, and then around that, you just hang on for dear life.
Yeah, that sums it up.
Um, all right. So yeah, well, I think we've spoken about some times where where that affected both of us. What about just to finish us off? We talk about like actually we've talked about some strategies. Listening, yeah, yeah, we've talked about some strategies there. I guess it's from this, it's more just like what would be the next step?
What would be the next step? What a great question. I don't know. It's like it's a continuous effort. I don't think there is any next step,
Mm,
you know? And I think probably the conclusion of everything that we've
mm,
explored here is that it is going to be a constant effort to
mm,
keep checking in with yourself and testing the waters almost, and realizing, whoa, okay, this week I definitely went too far here. Now I'm feeling it mentally. So that is where I've learned my boundary, right? Because as
mm,
life continues to evolve and your chores evolve, your responsibilities evolve, you evolve as a person and like what you can handle, those things have to change.
mm,
The things I could handle 3 years ago, I won't be able to do today and vice versa,
mm.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like what's next from here is just having your boundaries very clear cut and having your promises to yourself very clear cut as well, you
Hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
only then are you going to be able to achieve your flow state and be able to hold on to that and run with it, you know,
Yeah.
and rest and then run.
No, I love that. Yeah, understanding your motivation, like why do you want this outcome? Because I don't think many people want to achieve something just so they can be burnt out and miserable and hate life. That's not really a good reason. So if that's what you're feeling, then it doesn't mean you don't want the thing anymore. It means you're just approaching it the wrong way.
Mm.
And remember why you started something. How did I feel when I started? And remember that person that this is your like what you said before about what your promises are to yourself. It's like, are your promises to stick through regardless of what happens, or your promises to enjoy life and achieve what you want to achieve? So I think that's really crucial. It doesn't mean you can't achieve something if you're struggling. It just means you just have to come at it a different way. Um, but yeah, that was good. I think
I
we
like that.
I think we said some good stuff there.
I think so. I think I mean, it's an important topic. Like, I think it's a very needed
Mm,
topic as well. Not enough people talk about the flip side of your mental health and your self-awareness and things like that. It's
yeah.
not a topic that gets touched on very much. It's always the other way, like how to do more, how to fit more into your schedule, how to tick more boxes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it, like you said, like the the coaching, it's always kind of like, how do I train? What do I eat? How much cardio do I do? Rather than how often do I need to journal? This is sort of a very abstract thing to talk about as a bikini athlete. But I think it needs to become mainstream because the more people that realize other people are like them, the more they'll realize that they're not alone when they have issues. It's always okay to reach out and communicate what you're struggling with. Which leads on to what I'm about to say, which is if you guys are struggling, reach out. Kareen and I are available to help. Um, we're launching something next week, actually. Well, this week. Actually, by the time this comes out, it'll have already been launched, which is
That's
really, really cool.
exciting. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're launching an HourGlass beta app program, which is the introductory offer to the actual app that we're building, which is a separate platform. But we're using Kahuna's platform to build this off of. And it's an introductory version to that, which is using all of the information we've gathered in the last couple of years to grow Hourglass Physiques, and we put it all together into a program, 12-week program. So it's self-guided, but there is the ability to get extra accountability coaching from Kareen, and yeah, we're just really excited because it's along these lines. It's teaching everyone how to be holistic with their approach and how to maintain trajectory. That's what
Mm,
it's all about, is not just look good, but maintain that and continue to look better.
That's the
So,
thing. It's like the practice what you preach, right? Like
mm,
that's a very structured way to look at everything and see how you can slot all these things into your life. It's got so much
Mm.
great information in there.
Yeah, so we're really excited. Obviously, that'll have been launched by the time this podcast comes out. So if you haven't heard about it and you're listening to this, go and check out our page. There'll be plenty of information on there, and we'll be giving out updates as we go. But we'll be having monthly group meetings for all the members who are doing the program. And we'll do, it's like a private call with Kareen and I, and there'll be a lot of added value in there. So go check that out. If you have questions about that, message us about it. But if you need some help and you're struggling, reach out because we're happy to help, or we could point you in the right direction. So it'd be great to hear from you guys. Any final comments there?
Just keep taking care of yourself, guys.
Just
Just take a holiday.
Kareen's in a flow state right now.
Oh, can you feel it?
Yeah, I
Am I
can feel it.
radiating it through the screen?
Yeah, I can feel it. It's flowy.
Let's get into our flow state, guys. Here we go.
Yeah. No, I'm really keen for the group calls because I think that one on what, it's going to be one on many or two on many actually, but that sort of personal interaction is very valuable. It's something that I'm sure you would have benefited from when you started Korean before you had comp goals and things like this, but I definitely would have when I started, just to be around like-minded people that have the same goal, and just want to better themselves and also understand themselves. I think that's the most important thing here is as a coach, as coaches, we want to help you understand your body and your mind so that you can get the most out of it, not just from a physical perspective, but in your other things that you do, like your businesses and your personal life and relationships and things like this. It all comes together. And that's the beauty of bodybuilding. So that's why we're doing this. And we're excited to work with all of you. So yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you all in the next episode.